and start recording. Okay. All glories, Mother Rytasha, all glories to religion of love, all glories to the assembled devotees. O Lord God, please help us about these teachings, be an example of love in the world. Jai. So, a special class today. We're starting a new book from the religion of love, A Spiritual Revolution. And what's cool about today is I'm not the one giving class. Mother Rytasha's going to give class today. Yay! Or at least the first half. And what I mean by that is, before she disappeared from this world, we worked together on a commentary book for the religion of love. And we did 3 of the books together, and the Spiritual Revolution was one of them. So I have my notes from Mother Rytasha dictating natural commentary to the religion of love. A Spiritual Revolution. I, Rajak Khan, remember the day of my death and the tortures I suffered in the war. Sorry. So let me adjust my mic. Test. Yeah, it's better. Test. Okay, because I'm outdoors, I gotta up the gain. Let me start over. Sorry. I, Rajak Khan, remember the day of my death and the tortures I suffered and my escape from that death in the war of liberation for the land of Bangladesh, of glorious victories and millions dead, and I alive, but not in the same way, never again in the same way, for now there is only service and the search for God. And to God I prayed, and for truth I searched, many long years, leaving my homeland and traveling throughout the East. Still my prayers were unanswered, and I grew weary and downcast, and so prayed all the more. And then, when I had given up all hope, there appeared before me the Master for whom I had searched, and leaving everything, I followed. People who were hungry came and were fed. The children provided schools, help for the sick, and hope for the poor, loved by the people who call her the Angel of Bengal. But it is not of her good deeds I wish to speak of here, but of her teaching. For as I was taught by her, good deeds without God is like polishing the cage, but letting the bird inside die. For people knowing me before and finding me so changed asked, "Who is your teacher, and what is the teaching?" And I, answering with her words, said, "The teaching does not rest in the teacher, but in God alone, and is a fulfillment of all Scripture. The problems of man can only be solved by a spiritual revolution, which unites in understanding all the great religions of the world." I tell them that she teaches how to live by the truths inherent in all religions, to understand that we are eternal spirit souls, and that the only purpose of life is spiritual realization. And so I traveled and worked with her, going into India and up into the Himalaya mountains of Nepal. Wherever we traveled, she taught, and many came, for the people were tired of the sorrows of this world and hungry to hear. I, Rajak Khan. Rajak Khan is, of course, a real historical figure. But in the books of the religion of love, Rajak is the everyman. He is the one who narrates the story. He is the storyteller, and we observe and see through his eyes. And we relate with him because we also experience the same realizations and problems. So I, Raja Khan, remember the day of my death and the tortures I suffered, and my escape from that death in the war of liberation for the land of Bangladesh. So he is talking about his own experience at 16 years old, when he was a liberation guerrilla fighter in his country, because he thought that was the way to make a better world. Of glorious victories and millions dead. Here he's beginning to be a little sarcastic, because here they have won, but at what cost? And again, speaking of all wars and destruction. Of glorious victories and millions dead, and I alive, but not in the same way, never again in the same way, for now there is only service and the search for God. So he had the realization, as many are having, that we do not make things better by destroying, by hurting, by hating. And he has realized his purpose is, and the greater purpose of all of us, because he is every man in these books, is to search and to search for God. And to God I prayed, and for truth I searched. Many long years, leaving my homeland and traveling throughout the East. This is important because religion is not about someone telling you what is what, but your search to experience and realize those truths for yourself. Still, my prayers were unanswered. I have said many times, there's Mother Rytasha speaking, I have said many times that all prayers are answered, but our timing and God's timing are not the same. And I grew weary. So he is like us because he is very human. He prayed for something, wanted something, and didn't get it, and got tired, downcast, and so prayed all the more. This is the way to do it. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Winston Churchill said, context, this was a speech he made to a graduating class at university. All he said was, never give up, never give up, never give up. So Rajak, he prayed and didn't get his answer. So what did he do? He prayed even more and didn't give up. This is the way of all successful people. And downcast, and so prayed all the more. And then when I had given up all hope, there appeared before me the Master for whom I had searched, and leaving everything, I followed. So Rajak's personal story is interesting, because at 15 years old, he had a vision of his spiritual master, of a woman surrounded by light. And at 17, he knew the name of who his spiritual master would be. Side note, I've actually seen this notebook. It's Rajak's old high school cadet academy, Rashai Academy notebook, and he still has it. And when he wrote down Mother Rytasha's name on it. 17 years old. Never met Mother Rytasha, of course not. She'd never even been to Bangladesh by that point, before the war. And at 17, he knew the name of who his spiritual master would be. And at 33, he actually met, in the flesh, his spiritual master. And so he left everything. And when we mean to leave everything, we leave the things that hinder us on the path to God. And we keep the things that are useful. And he followed. He didn't lead, He didn't take over. Great leaders are followers first. And then, because he particularly had a great talent for social work, he helped in the charitable work of the charity, which is love made concrete. I'd like to add a little extra side note to Rajak's story. At the time he met Mother Rytasha, he was a master's degree holder in social work from Dhaka University, best and brightest of his country, freedom fighter, really fought and bled for his country. He was actually captured at one point by the enemy, his enemy at the time, would be East Pakistani soldiers. And he was tortured and whatnot. I think he was even shot a couple times, got some bullet holes in him. And he somehow by God's grace, he escapes the night before he was to be executed. It was actually on a train. The train was going to some military camp where they were going to line up the prisoners one by one and execute them by firing squad. And the train was traveling by night, and he was watching this flickering light that would go on and off inside the train. And at one point, the train passed over a bridge, over a river, and it was an area he knew. And he somehow got up and leaped and jumped out of the train car, off the bridge and into the river, tied up, and then swam while they stopped the train. And they come out with their gun, shooting the river, just like a movie. And he escaped. And he took that as a sign that, even before that, he said, I remember he told me in confidence that on that night, he prayed to God, if you help me to live and get out of this situation, I promise to serve you with all my life, give my life to you. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing. Very beautiful. So he survived the war, and he meant what he said. So he decided to be in service to others, and that's how he became a great social worker. And he was working for a big organization called World Vision at the time, big NGO, and he had a big directorial position, big, huge salary. He had a car and driver, nice house, everything. And he gave all of that up to just volunteer full-time for the charity that Mother Rytasha founded, which she was also a volunteer full-time. There was no salary positions in the charity. Everyone in the charity's volunteer. Pretty cool, huh? That's how I got involved, actually. What attracted me first was how pure the charity was run, in contrast to these giant organizations where you give so much money to them and just a small fraction even goes to the children on their pamphlet. Anywho, so Rajak, very, very interesting man, very sincere devotee. People who were hungry came and were fed. The children provided schools, help for the sick and hope for the poor, loved by the people who call her the Angel of Bengal. But it is not of her good deeds I wish to speak of here, but of her teaching. This is where all good things come out of. Gandhi said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." Your actions are manifest from who you are, and who you are on the highest level is your spiritual state. For I was taught by her, good deeds without God is like polishing the cage but letting the bird inside die. It's important to keep a balance. As long as we have bodies, we have to take care of the material. We will need some food, some shelter, some of this, which all cost money. But if we forget who we are, that we are spiritual souls, and just concentrate on the material, then we are like polishing the cage and letting the bird inside die. For people knowing me before and finding me so changed asked, "Who is your teacher, and what is the teaching?" So this is what preaching is on the best level. Not telling other people what to do or what to be. Doing it yourself. Being it. And inspiring people to want to be like you. If you tell people what to do, they will resist you, and they will not like you. That's very true. I relate to this very much. I don't like people telling me what to do. um, anywho. And I, answering with her words, said, "The teaching does not rest in the teacher, but in God alone." So many people will say they are followers of Mother Rytasha, but that is a wrong idea. We are all meant to be followers of God. The teaching may come through the spiritual master, but it is the Word of God, and therein lies the potency. And this particular teaching is the fulfillment of all spiritual. The religion of love is inclusive of all religions and all teachings given by God, and inclusive of all people. There is no one that God does not include. Everyone is on the path, some closer, some further, but all are on the path to God. The teaching does not rest in the teacher, but in God alone. Oops. I forgot to move this one. Oops, sorry. And is a fulfillment of all Scripture. The problems of man can only be solved by a spiritual revolution, which unites in understanding all the great religions of the world. When God gave the truth that makes us free into the world, it was meant for everybody. What Jesus brought, what Muhammad brought, what Moses brought, was not for a particular race or group of people. It was meant for the world. And though they all preached love, man, in politics, dividing up, separated brother from brother. And I say, don't treat your brother like another. I tell them that she teaches how to live by the truths inherent in all religions, to understand that we are eternal spirit souls, and that the only purpose of life is spiritual realization. And the very important word is to live by the truth, not to speak them, not to shout at people or to give a great class, but to live it. And the point of it is to try. We are meant to bring a message into the world, not in perfection, because we're perfect, but because of our humanity. And then it tells us who we really are. So if I asked you who you are, you will say, I am a man, I am a woman, or I am a American, a Christian, a Jew. These are all bodily designations, but we are not the body. We are spiritual beings. Scripture tells us God does not look at us by what religion we are, but how we act, by our actions. And then we speak about the purpose of life. What is important is not how many things we can accumulate, because none of the things we can accumulate in this world we can keep. I often tell this story of a wealthy man, and it was asked, how much did he leave? And the answer, of course, is everything. Do not waste this opportunity of a human birth, collecting things you will ultimately lose. But take this opportunity to advance spiritually, to purify yourself so you may enter the kingdom of God. And so I traveled and worked with her, going into India and up into the Himalaya mountains of Nepal. And wherever we traveled, she taught, and many came, for the people were tired of the sorrows of this world and hungry to hear. So we are living in an extraordinary time. It is a time of great sorrow because it is the most degraded time. We think that we are so advanced because of machinery like the internet and airplanes, but that is not the criteria of advancement, but is the moral, the ethical, and spiritual advancement. And it was said that in this time there will be a spiritual revolution, that in this time it will inundate the world with love. In the beginning, it is of people that are tired of the corruption and disappointment in their life, and so they are hungry for something real. And spirituality is reality. And the beginning of spiritual reality is to hear. That is the beginning of all knowledge. Oh, sorry, my foot's fallen asleep. What'd you say?
Can you repeat that part again?
And the beginning of spiritual reality is to hear. That is the beginning of all knowledge. Traveling by boat in Bangladesh, many gathered on the riverbank to see her pass by, and she stopped and spoke to them, saying, "Know that you are already perfect." So this is a wonderful thing to know. Nobody teaches you spirituality. Spirituality is what you are. We may only remind each other by love of what we may have forgotten. And this is important. This is the key. By your loving intention and by your very being, this is how spirituality is passed from one to another. Like the story of the log burning in the forest. If you put another log beside it, it will catch fire. So that perfection is always there. It may become covered and you don't experience it, but that soul, even in the worst, not just human beings, but every living being, is covered and suffering. Know that you are already perfect, that your soul, which is full in knowledge, is eternal and blissful, that you are more brilliant than 1,000,000 suns. But now in illusion you are as the sun when covered by cloud, and this cloud is your ignorance. The only sin is ignorance. And that's why God gives knowledge. And knowledge is only knowledge. It becomes wisdom when it is accepted upon. Or I think she meant to say acted upon. When I took these notes, I was typing as fast as I could like a stenographer, trying to keep up with Mother Rytasha. So there are some typos I need to clear up. It becomes wisdom when it is acted upon, I believe is what she meant to say. It's not theoretical, but practical. I'll just chime in then. So as Mother Rytasha would teach, all knowledge is secondhand knowledge. Knowledge of books, knowledge of others. It's when we apply that knowledge in our daily life. We really try our best to live that knowledge. And when we experience that knowledge for ourselves, that is wisdom. That's when it becomes a part of you. It's not just theory anymore. It's not just philosophy. It's not just, nice words you heard. It becomes a part of you when you realize it. That's like I say, well, I can't unknow what I know. Once you know, right? Once you've heard, there's no going back. And that's because it's become a part of you. You can't unhear that now. That's wisdom. And it comes from doing it, being it. Only by the cleansing practice of religion will that cloud clear away, and with it your sorrows. This is the test. If you are sorrowful, that shows how covered your spiritual self really is, how diseased you are. And the way to get rid of your sorrow is to become purified, so that your spiritual, beautiful self is manifest and experienced. All religion, as given by God, is basically a cleansing and a purification of our ignorance, our illusion. And when that is cleaned, and you are cleared of all of that, you become joyful. And it is a very different joyful than you get in the material. Yes, there is some joy in the material, but it doesn't last, and so is disappointing. And a man on the riverbank called out, saying, "You speak to us of religion, yet we have had religion for thousands of years, and look at the state of the world. Everywhere war and greed and man's inhumanity to man." Though religion is often blamed, actually, horrible things are going on in the name of religion, in the name of God. This is not the truth. "Sadly, you are right," she replied, and spoke no more for a while. Then, noticing a small child playing on the riverbank, covered with mud, she asked, "Have we not also had soap for thousands of years, and still that child is dirty?" "He has not used the soap," explained the same man. "Yes," she answered, "and we do not use religion." So this is the key, that the actual living of it, this is a living experience. Every minute of every day, Jesus said, "Give us our daily bread," not just once a week, but every day. When Muhammad went up to the seventh heaven, God said to pray 64 times, which basically meant pray all the time, meaning not to forget God for a single moment, and acting in a certain way. For we are as a man who, working in a bank, counts out money, some for me, some for the bank, and is therefore considered a thief and put into prison. So a man who lives, taking some for me, some for God, when all is God's, is also a thief and must remain in the prison house of birth and death. Only when our whole life is given to God will we be free. Oops. Restart the timer. So on our way to God, we have to be very exclusive. Exclude anything that is a hindrance on the path to God. So we become very exclusive. We are very single-pointed to God. But when we reach God, we become very inclusive, because there is nothing that is not of God. Everything is holy, and the love that we feel for God, therefore, is manifest in everyone and everything. Okay, I'll stop there. Redo the recording. All right. So, does anyone have any questions on Mother Rytasha's class on a spiritual revolution? Which is my pleasure to read. I think my wife has a question.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, me.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I think my wife had a question, but she wanted to see if you had a question first.
My question's somewhat related. You mentioned praying earlier. I was just wondering how is prayer kind of seen? You know, like how should we be doing it? Is it based off of like our penances and our character? And yeah, just in general, what's the stance on prayer and what should we be praying for?
Okay, good question. In case it didn't pick up the audio, me to ask, what's up with prayer? You know, what should we be praying for? Basically, what's prayer all about? You know, like as far as atonement or penance or whatnot, right? So, prayer is simply talking to God. That's what prayer is. When you speak with God in every manner in which you worship or believe, you know, that is prayer. And prayer is purifying because in prayer we are remembering the Supreme, you know, and we are recognizing the divine, Supreme Lord, you know, however, you know, people believe, of course, people are different. But that reverence, that remembrance is purifying to the heart. But there are different levels, of course, in prayer in terms of how purifying they can be. And that is determined by what is your intention in the prayer. Kind of like what is your intention in anything you do, that will determine the result, right? It's not just your attention, but it's your intention in the attention that determines the result. For most, they make of God their order supplier when they pray. Praying, oh God, give me this, give me that, can you bless me with this, bless me with that? And the reason why people pray for this is because they, in knowledge, know that God is all-powerful and can do anything. So, oh God, can you help me land that job I'm interviewing for? Oh, help me get a good wife, or oh God, help me help my team win the World Series. People pray for all these materialistic things, and they're all materialistic because they're praying for material things that will benefit their bodies or give temporary pleasure and comfort to their mind and senses. And it's better to pray to God for those things honestly than to not pray, because prayer is better than no absence of prayer. Some devotion is better than zero devotion, of course. But the highest prayer, of course, isn't asking for anything material, but asking for God's help in your spiritual life. Asking for God to help purify you. Asking for God to guide you so that you can serve Him and His servants properly. One of the highest prayers you can possibly do is just chanting the names of God. You may think, well, that's just repetitive chanting of God's names. How is that a prayer? Well, that's because inherent in chanting is a prayer. And that prayer is, "Oh Lord, I don't want anything. Anything. I just want you. I just want you." Therefore, you just call in upon the name of God to fill your heart with God. Come again to love. This is the highest prayer. Now, I know there is ritualistic prayer that religions do advise. For example, in Islam, praying multiple times a day, here namaz, And other religions too, they have different regulations for time and place, when you should and shouldn't pray, and etc., and what to pray. Sometimes there, those ritualistic prayers that you just reading verbatim the prayer, and it can become, well, a habit for many, and they may not have the purest loving intentions when performing ritualistic prayer. Some of it's just a chore, in a sense. But better to do that than not pray at all, honestly. Abiding by the scriptures, praying 3 or 5 times a day, or, all day long, Mother Rytasha would say, begin where you are. For the beginning is the end, and the end is the end of your suffering. So begin where you are. If you're already following regulative principles, you're already following regular prayer, and that's your thing, wonderful. But I would say, try your best to do it with love, with the intention of purifying your heart so that you can come home to the Lord and serve Him ceaselessly. There's nothing wrong with ritualistic prayer. It's fine. But you don't have to do this many times a day or that many times a day, honestly. It can be any time that's convenient to you, or even not convenient. Just, any time that you sincerely pray to the Lord, that time is the right time. And hopefully, the goal being that every single moment in your life is that time for prayer. That there is no such thing as turning prayer off. You live in a state of prayer. Live in a state of devotion, where all your thought is like a prayer, all your words glorifying the Lord, all your actions holy, all the food you eat is a sacrament. This is a life of devotion. Fountain of love that doesn't turn off. That's what we're going for. Does that answer your question, brother?
Yeah. You even answered a follow-up question. I was going to ask how chanting relates, but then you answered that in your response. So yeah, that answers my question.
Bonus. Yeah. Prayer is nice. A lot of things come up in prayer. Oftentimes we feel like we have no one to talk to. Or we feel that there's nobody that we can relate to or who really understands us. And for many, they may find comfort and solace in speaking to God, who understands us better than most. In fact, nobody understands us more than God. Nor does anyone love us more than God. But I admit, it's mostly a one-sided conversation. But He hears everything, even the words you don't speak, the thoughts you think. They're not hidden. Every thought we think is like a message sent out into the world in search of God. He hears everything. He knows everything. He's everywhere. It's the meaning of omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. And God always answers prayers. Always. He really does, actually. So sometimes that answer is no. God will give us what we need, not always what we want. And sometimes our suffering is necessary. Sometimes we are atoning for things that we've done. Verily, that's actually why we are suffering, to be honest. But God is merciful. God is very compassionate, the most merciful, the most compassionate. And there's no one better really to talk to than the Lord. Anywho, my wife, you have a question?
First about the prayers. Sometimes I just don't want. It's not like I don't talk with God, but with my thoughts, it's like from inside I pray to God. So there's no specific way of praying, even if I'm thinking and talking with God, but with not with the words, but with my thoughts, with the type of praying too, right?
With your thoughts? Like just praying internally?
Mm-hmm. But I'm not just sit and just talk and I can hear myself.
Okay, so the question is, are silent prayers within as good as spoken prayers?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's fine. Totally fine. God, like I said, God hears everything. God is within our hearts, so He hears everything. It's nicer if you can speak it out loud, kind of like chanting, because it just engages more of your senses.
Yeah, for sure, but it's not 100% all the time. But sometimes I just don't. I don't have energy to just talk or like speak out. Like I just feel more comfortable to just speak within myself.
That's fine, as you're comfortable. If you feel more comfortable to pray silently within versus praying out loud or making a show of it, that's totally fine. In fact, it's even preferable. Mother Rytasha says, better you pray in the closet but than make a show of it. Because some people do make a show of it. In Islam, there are some people that they get a big old callus right here on their forehead. Have you seen that?
Mm-hmm.
You've seen that. It's common in Bangladesh too. They get a little clay stone or something that has something to do with Mecca.
They burn it and just put it
Yeah, and oh my gosh,
make it hot and then put it on their forehead and pretend to others that I pray a lot. That's why my forehead has a mark.
Right. So, for those who aren't familiar with this tradition, not really a tradition, more like nonsense. So people pray. No, this is not the nonsense part. What I'll say after. But people pray often. They put their head. This is in Islam. Some tablet that says like something to do with Mecca.
That is coming from Mecca.
Yeah, some little clay tablet from Mecca, and then they put when they do their daily prayers, they put their forehead on that little tablet. Like they're more connected to Mecca, and that's nice. That's fine. But some people, with the clay tablet or not, they really try to force their head into it to like leave like a mark, leave a callus.
They make it warm.
Well, some people, yes, there's that too. They really try to like really make a big callus here, right on their forehead, and they walk around with this big old, silly looking callus on their forehead, as a means to appear more pious than others. Like, see how holy I am. Like, see how hard I pray. I pray so hard. Look how hard I prayed. Look how hard my head is. It's more like hard-headed than full of faith. I mean, it's silly. And my wife didn't pick up. She's saying some people they burn something and like actually burn. They burn the clay and then put the hot clay on their forehead to speed it up. Nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. Or some people that make a big show of religion, Not just Islam, any religion. We've seen it. Crazy evangelical people doing crazy stuff. Or they'll picture, they'll think in your head of some guy standing on a tree stump and shouting at people, God's this, God's that, God's going to judge you. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No one really likes that guy. Whoever that guy is, there's always that guy. Of every religion, everyone's got the nut job, and everyone who's just shouting at people what to do and shouting judgments and shouting all this negative, hateful stuff. And you look at their eyes, you look at their face, and their face, they look ugly. And I don't mean like physically appear, but like the energy, the quality, like that, the inner quality is just so ugly and so ugh. That's what Mother Rytasha said, who you are. That's what your preaching is. Who you are. That's what you're preaching. What did she say exactly? It was really nice how she put it. Gosh, no one can give class like her. She was the best. But yeah, it doesn't matter how you wish to pray. That is individual. Remember, everyone is unique, so too is your love. Your love is unique. So you don't have to just be like everyone else. You can pray in your own way, of course. It was you talking with God. It's your own unique relationship. So don't worry about that.
And there is one more question.
You have another question? Okay.
Yeah, but I know Mother Rytasha said that ask if I understood that Mother Rytasha said that ask a question that is beneficial for yourself, right? Is that correct?
What's that? Oops. Ask a question that's beneficial for yourself?
Yeah, for example, what is good for your spiritual life?
Well, that's kind of the purpose of asking spiritual questions, is to benefit spiritually.
But my question is, out of curiosity and learning, that as I heard today, that all the people are in the spiritual path, correct?
Yeah, Mother Rytasha said everyone's on the path to God. Some nearer, some farther.
Even the bad people in the world, that they're committing lots of bad things, committing murder, they are also in a spiritual path. And how we know that? You know what I mean?
So my wife is asking, everyone's on the path to God. What about all the people who are like murderers and killers and really wicked, evil people? Mm-hmm. They're on the path to God? Well, as Mother Rytasha said, they are. Just imagine, the way I see it in my mind, as I see like a ladder or a train tracks, in a sense, like this, that goes from the bottom of this universe all the way to the spiritual world. And we're just in our little mine cart, and it's either going this way or that way, I could picture those, the guys with the little, the pumping thing, the little seesaw, and they're going up and down the train tracks. So imagine that's the path, okay? And your actions are either bringing you closer to truth, nearer to God, or they're bringing you further from God, or you're just stagnant. Either way, it does feel kind of linear, this path, whether, whatever action we do, it's either bringing you closer or further away from truth. Are we acting in spiritual, acting in love, or are we acting on the material plane? Are we trying to fulfill our material desires? Doesn't matter what that desire is. If that desire is to just, make a lot of money, or the desire is to do some wicked acts, it's on the material plane, and it puts you further from God, because it just binds you with more karmic reactions, more ignorance. And the darker someone's consciousness is covered over, doing all those wicked bad things, hurting people, well, they're furthest from the truth. They're really, really far. Still the same track, but they're just way on the other end. I would think of it that way, because she says everyone has spirituality. Spirituality is natural to all. She says another part in the book, spirituality is like health. Everyone's got health. Some got good health, some got bad health. So, just like your bodily health can be in different shapes, so can your spiritual life, so can your consciousness. Remember, everybody Everyone is a spiritual being, just within different bodies. And everyone's purpose is the same, spiritual realization, to purify the ignorance which keeps us from experiencing our true state of love, and thus return home to God. Any other questions? My wife is plumb out. How about you, Meet?
I don't think I have anything.
Okay, then. Well, thank you for joining us out here in the forest. I hope it all worked out. I think God helped us that this crazy nature setup, phone in the tree, jerry-rigged, doing a hotspot to the laptop, streaming on Discord. All worked out. Yay, Jai. All right. Thank you all for coming. All glories to Mother Rytasha, glorious religion of love, all glories to the assembled devotees. Jai.